Captain Day-Ho stood at the observation deck of the Eternal Dawn, watching a massive orbital station rotate slowly against the backdrop of Concordia Prime. The planet below was beautiful, with swirling clouds of purple and gold. He had been stationed here for 3 years now, representing humanity at the Galactic Council. 3 years of meetings, negotiations, and endless diplomatic ceremonies. Behind him, Ambassador Hana was reviewing the agenda for today's session. She always smiled, even when reading the most tedious documents. It was something the other species found curious about humans. They smiled too much, apologized for everything, and seemed almost painfully polite. The Council had learned to expect this from humanity over the past 50 years since first contact. Another trade dispute? Day-Ho asked without turning around. Actually, no, Hana replied, and something in her voice made him turn. Her smile was still there, but her eyes were different. The Vrelians requested emergency session time. They have a proposal. Day-Ho felt a small knot form in his stomach. The Vrelians were trouble. They always had been. A warrior race that had conquered dozens of species before the Council formed. They barely tolerated the idea of peaceful cooperation. They saw diplomacy as weakness and compromise as surrender. 2 hours later, Day-Ho sat in the council chamber alongside Hana and Commander Ji-Wan, their military observer. The chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in concentric circles rising toward a domed ceiling. Hundreds of species were represented. Here, from the insectoid Chifrax to the floating gaseous luminars. Humanity occupied a modest section near the middle, neither prestigious nor insignificant. The Vrelian delegation entered, and the chamber grew quiet. They were impressive beings, standing nearly 3 meters tall with thick armored skin and 4 powerful arms. Their leader, War Chief Throck, moved to the center speaking platform with the confident stride of someone who had never lost a battle. Honored Council, Throck began, his voice like grinding stone. I come with a simple proposal. The Vrelian Empire has protected the Eastern Spiral Arm for centuries. We have kept the peace, eliminated pirates, and maintained order. Yet we receive little recognition for our service. Day-Ho exchanged a glance with Hana. Protected was a generous word. Dominated was more accurate. Therefore, Throck continued, we propose a new tribute system. Those species benefiting from our protection should contribute to its maintenance. We have identified several colony worlds that would serve this purpose perfectly. He paused, letting his gaze sweep the chamber. 3 human colonies in the Epsilon sector would be an appropriate starting point. We will assume administrative control. Humanity will, of course, be compensated with preferred trade status. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations. Day-Ho felt Ji-Wan tense beside him, but the commander remained silent, as always. Hana's smile never wavered. The council mediator, an elderly luminar named Brightness of Dawn, floated to the center. This is highly irregular. The Council does not recognize tribute systems. However, we are committed to hearing all proposals. The human delegation may respond. Day-Ho stood slowly, adjusting his uniform. He walked to the speaking platform, very aware that every eye in the chamber was on him. The humans were known for being reasonable, for finding compromises, for avoiding conflict. Everyone expected him to negotiate. War Chief Throck, Day-Ho said politely, we appreciate the Vrelian Empire's contributions to galactic security. However, regarding your proposal, we must respectfully decline. The chamber went silent. Throck's expression shifted from confident to incredulous. You decline? Throck repeated. Yes, Day-Ho said simply. Those colonies belong to human citizens. We cannot and will not surrender them. Throck's forearms flexed, a sign of aggression among his people. You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of reality. The Vrelian fleet is the most powerful military force in known space. We are offering you a peaceful solution. The alternative is much less pleasant. Dai-Ho looked at him steadily. We understand the situation clearly, War Chief. Our answer remains no. He returned to his seat. Hana was still smiling, but now other council members could see what Dai-Ho had noticed earlier. Her eyes were completely cold. Throck stood motionless for a moment and laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. Very well. The council will learn that human stubbornness has consequences. I offer humanity 7 of your days to reconsider. After that, the Vrelian fleet will take what we are owed. Consider this our final mercy. He strode from the chamber, his delegation following. The room exploded into chaos. Council members from dozens of species began shouting questions, offering opinions, demanding order. Brightness of dawn struggled to restore calm. Dai-Ho sat quietly, listening to the panic around him. The Chithrax. Ambassador scuttled over, her multiple legs clicking nervously. Captain Dai-Ho, she chittered, you must reconsider. The Vrelians are not bluffing. They destroyed the Kelnari civilization over a similar dispute. 70 billion dead in 3 days. We are aware of the Vrelian military history, Dai-Ho replied politely. But we cannot set a precedent of surrendering our people to threats. This is not about precedent, the Chithrax insisted. This is about survival. Please, be reasonable. Reasonable. That word again. Humans were always expected to be reasonable, to compromise, to yield. As the session finally adjourned, Dai-Ho, Hana, and Jiwan walked back to their shuttle in silence. Only when they were inside, with the doors sealed, did anyone speak. They think we will fold, Jiwan said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken all day. Yes, Hana agreed, her diplomatic smile finally fading. They always do. Dai-Ho looked at both of them. Send the message home. Use the old codes. Jiwan nodded and moved to the communication console. Hana placed a hand on Dai-Ho's shoulder. Are you certain? She asked. Once we start this, there is no going back. Everyone will see us differently. The Vrelians gave us 7 days, Dai-Ho said, staring out at the stars. They think that is a threat. They do not understand it is a gift. 7 days is more than enough time. For what? Hana asked, though she already knew the answer. For humanity to stop being polite, Dai-Ho replied. Behind them, Jiwan had finished encoding the message. It was simple, just 3 words in an old Earth language that the Council translation systems would not recognize. 3 words that would echo through human space and set in motion events that would change the galaxy forever. Protocol sword activated. The message was sent, traveling through quantum relays to Earth, to Mars, to Luna, to every human colony and ship scattered across space. In command centers and military bases, on quiet farm worlds and bustling trade stations, humans received the message and began to move. The mask of politeness was about to fall, and the Galactic Council would finally understand what humanity had been hiding behind their constant smiles and apologies for the past 50 years. They were about to learn that when humans said please and thank you, it was not weakness, but it was a warning. The next 3 days passed in a blur of diplomatic activity. Council members approached the human delegation constantly, offering advice, warnings, and thinly veiled threats. Everyone wanted humanity to surrender the colonies. It was the sensible thing to do, they said, the logical choice. The survival option. Ambassador Hana met with them all, always smiling, always polite, always saying no. The Korthan Commonwealth. Humanity's closest allies in the Council were perhaps the most insistent. Their representative, an elderly being named Collector of Stories, visited Hana's quarters on the 3rd day. I have seen the Vrelians at war, he told her, his 3 eyes showing genuine concern. Please understand, Ambassador. This is not posturing. They will kill billions of your people without hesitation. 3 colonies are not worth that price. Hana poured him tea, a human custom she had introduced to many council members. Collector, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. When? The Korthan were offered the choice between freedom and survival. Which did your ancestors choose? The alien was silent for a long moment. That was different. We had allies. We had options. Did you? Hannah asked gently. Or did you simply refuse to accept that survival without freedom was no survival at all? After Collector of Stories left, Hannah stood at her window, looking out at the orbital station. Somewhere out there, human ships were moving. Ships that the Council had catalogued as research vessels, cargo transports, and civilian explorers. Ships that were now quietly changing positions, altering courses, and powering up systems that had been dormant for years. Meanwhile, Commander Jiwan attended every Council military briefing. She sat in the back, saying nothing, but her presence made the other military observers uncomfortable. She watched everything with dark, calculating eyes, taking notes on a small tablet that never seemed to leave her hands. On the 4th day, something interesting happened at the Council security meeting. A Vrelian intelligence officer was boasting about their fleet preparations, describing in detail how they would siege the human colonies. Jiwan listened patiently, then asked a single question. How many supply ships support your main battle fleet? The Vrelian officer blinked, surprised she had spoken at all. That is classified information. Of course, Jiwan said politely, and went back to her notes. But several other observers noticed she was smiling slightly. It was not a warm smile. That evening, a young human engineer named Minho was drinking at one of the station's cantinas. He was not part of the diplomatic corps, just a technician who maintained life support systems. A Vrelian junior officer, already drunk on fermented kelpic acid, sat down next to him. You are human, the Vrelian slurred. You should be terrified. In 3 days, my people will crush your colonies. Minho sipped his drink calmly. Maybe. There is no maybe, the Vrelian laughed. We are warriors. You are diplomats and merchants. This will not even be a real fight. Tell me something, Minho said, turning to face the alien. Have you ever wondered why humans are so polite? Why we always say please and thank you? Why we smile so much? The Vrelian snorted. Because you are weak. Because you fear conflict. Minho shook his head slowly. No, it is because we learned what happens when we do not. He finished his drink and stood up. We learned that lesson over and over for thousands of years until we finally understood. Politeness is not weakness. It is control. He left the Vrelian sitting there, confused and slightly unsettled. The conversation spread through the station's underground communication networks. Within hours, intelligence officers from a dozen species were pulling up humanity's historical records. What they found in the open sections of Earth's database made them uncomfortable. The humans had fought wars that lasted decades. They had developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Their history was soaked in blood, filled with conflicts that would have ended most species. Yet they had presented themselves to the Council as reformed, enlightened, peaceful. A Chithrax analyst compiled a report that reached the Council Security Committee on day 5. In it, she noted something disturbing. Humanity had never actually said they were pacifists. They had simply been polite. They followed Council rules, participated in diplomatic processes, and avoided military conflicts. But nowhere in their official statements had they ever claimed to have abandoned their capacity for war. They have been quiet, the report concluded. But quiet and harmless are not the same thing. The Council began to worry. Emergency meetings were called. Some species suggested intervening, forcing both sides to negotiate. Others thought humanity should be given aid, though what form that aid might take was unclear. A few quietly started moving their own ships away from the disputed sectors. On the Eternal Dawn, Captain Day-Ho received daily reports from Earth. He read them in his quarters, late at night when the station was quiet. The reports were encoded, but their message was clear. Humanity was preparing. Ships were moving into position throughout Council space. Orbital defense platforms were coming online around Earth and the core colonies. On Luna, ancient installations were being powered up for the first time in decades. And across human space, reservists were being quietly activated. People who had been teachers, farmers, doctors, and engineers were reporting to bases and remembering training from years past. Hana visited him on the 6th night. She looked tired, which was unusual for her. The Korthan offered to mediate, she said. They suggest we surrender one colony as a compromise. They think it might satisfy the Vrelians. What did you tell them? I thanked them politely and declined. She sat down across from him. Day-Ho, are we doing the right thing? So many will die. Day-Ho was quiet for a moment. When my grandfather was young, Earth was divided into hundreds of nations. They fought constantly. Millions died in wars over resources, ideology, territory. Eventually, we unified, but it took centuries of learning one terrible lesson. Peace through strength is better than peace through submission. The Council does not understand that, Hana said. No, Day-Ho agreed. They built their peace on compromise and mutual weakness. Every species gave up their military power to avoid conflict. But the Vrelians never truly accepted that. They just waited. And now they have mistaken our cooperation for surrender. Yes, Hana stood, her diplomatic mask slipping back into place. Then tomorrow, we teach them otherwise. The 7th day arrived. Throughout the orbital station, species from across the galaxy went about their business. But there was a nervous energy in the air. Everyone knew that today, the ultimatum expired. Everyone wondered what would happen. In the council chamber, Brightness of Dawn made one final plea for negotiation. Surely we can find a peaceful solution. The council exists to prevent war, not facilitate it. Captain Day-Ho stood to respond, but before he could speak, alarms began blaring. A communications officer rushed into the chamber. The Vrelian fleet has jumped into the Sol system, she announced, her voice shaking. 300 warships. They are demanding Earth's immediate surrender. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some species cried out in alarm. Others immediately began emergency protocols to protect their own territories. The Vrelian delegation sat calmly, watching the humans with predatory satisfaction. Day-Ho walked to the center platform. Every screen in the chamber suddenly switched to show the Sol system, where the massive Vrelian fleet was indeed entering formation near Mars. Honored Council, Day-Ho said quietly, his voice cutting through the chaos. For 50 years, humanity has been your partner in peace. We have followed your laws, respected your customs, and worked toward cooperation. We hoped that would be enough. We truly did. He paused, looking around the chamber. But we also prepared for the possibility that it would not be enough. What happens next, you need to understand, is not what we wanted. It is what you forced us to reveal. On the screens, the first human ship it cloaked directly behind the Vrelian formation. The war was beginning, and the galaxy was about to learn what humanity had been politely keeping hidden. War Chief Throck stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Crimson Wrath, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, 300 Vrelian warships held formation, the most powerful military fleet ever assembled in this sector. He felt confident, almost bored. This would be over quickly. Scan results? He barked at his sensor officer. The system appears minimally defended, War Chief. We detect orbital stations around their homeworld and the moon, but no significant military fleet. Some scattered patrol ships, nothing more. Throck laughed, a harsh grinding sound. The humans are either cowards or fools. Open a channel to Earth. The view screen shifted to show a simple communication room. A human in a plain uniform appeared. Throck recognized him from the council sessions. Captain Daiho. Human captain, Throck said, not bothering to hide his contempt. Your 7 days are expired. Surrender your 3 colonies immediately, or we will take them by force. Resist, and Earth itself will burn. Daiho looked at him with an expression that Throck could not quite read. Sadness? Pity? It was infuriating. War Chief Throck, Daiho said softly, we gave you every chance to walk away. We tried diplomacy. We tried politeness. We tried to show you that cooperation was better than conquest. You chose not to listen. Spare me your philosophy, Throck snarled. Surrender or die. You still do not understand, Daiho replied. But you will. I am sorry it has to be this way. The screen went dark. Throck felt a moment of confusion. Sorry? The human was apologizing? Then his sensor officer shouted. War Chief, contact. Multiple ships decloaking directly behind our formation. Throck spun to his tactical display. Where moments ago there had been empty space, now dozens of ships appeared. But these were not the small human vessels the Council had catalogued. These were warships, sleek and dark, covered in weapon systems that his database could not identify. All ships, combat formation. Throck ordered. Prepare to engage. But before his fleet could react, every civilian station in the Sol system suddenly lit up. What the Vrelians had dismissed as commercial platforms and mining installations were transforming. Armor plating retracted to reveal weapons arrays. Power signatures spiked to military-grade levels. The humans had hidden an entire defense network in plain sight. Receiving targeting locks, his officer reported, voice rising in panic. Hundreds of them. War Chief, they have railguns. Missile batteries. Energy weapons we cannot classify. How did we not detect these? Throck felt cold realization wash over him. The humans had not been unprepared. They had been waiting. Then the moon opened fire. What every intelligence report had described as a scientific research base was actually something else entirely. Something old. Massive defense cannons emerged from craters that had been carefully camouflaged for decades. They fired in perfect synchronization, magnetically accelerated projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The first volley tore through the Vrelian formation like it was paper. Shields that had withstood the weapons of a dozen species simply failed against the kinetic impact. 3 ships exploded instantly. 5 more lost power and began drifting. The rest scattered, breaking formation in panic. Return fire. Throck roared. All ships engage at will. The Vrelian fleet was experienced. Despite their shock, they recovered quickly and began coordinating their attack. Plasma cannons and missile salvos filled space with deadly energy. They focused fire on the closest human warship, a destroyer-class vessel that hung between them and Earth. Their weapons hit the human ship, and for a moment Throck felt hope. But the destroyer's shields held. More than held, they seemed to absorb the energy and redirect it. Then the human ship returned fire, and Throck understood that he was facing something he had never encountered before. The destroyer did not just shoot back. It danced. It moved with impossible grace, its engines somehow allowing maneuvers that should have torn the ship apart. It targeted specific systems on Vrelian vessels with surgical precision. Weapons platforms, shield generators, engine pods, each shot disabled rather than destroyed. And Throck realized with growing horror that the humans were deliberately not killing them. They were demonstrating superiority. More human ships appeared throughout the system. The research vessels the Council had tracked were shedding their civilian disguises, revealing combat-grade hulls underneath. Trade convoys that had spent years establishing routes were actually ammunition supply lines. Survey ships that had been mapping asteroid fields now showed themselves as stealth carriers, launching wings of fighters that moved faster than Vrelian sensors could track. On Mars, entire mountains split open. The Red Planet had been fortified decades ago, apparently during humanity's early space expansion. Now those ancient defenses came alive with modern upgrades. Defense platforms that combined old human warfare knowledge with new technology created a killing field that the Vrelian fleet had flown directly into. "Retreat!" Throck ordered, his pride crumbling. All ships, jump to hyperspace immediately. "We cannot, War Chief," his navigation officer reported, terror clear in his voice. "They have activated some kind of gravity anchor. Hyperspace engines are offline. We are trapped." Throck felt his four hearts sink. Trapped, the humans had not just prepared defenses. They had prepared a cage. A new voice came over his communication system. Female, calm, speaking with the careful precision of someone who had calculated every possibility. "War Chief Throck, this is Commander G1 of the Human Defense Forces. You have two options. Option 1, continue fighting. We have mapped every ship in your fleet. We know their crew complements. We have calculated their repair capabilities. We have identified their command structure. If you continue, we will disable your entire fleet within the next 47 minutes with estimated casualties of 23,000. Option 2, stand down immediately. Power down your weapons. Prepare to be boarded. Choose now." Throck looked at his tactical display. In just 10 minutes of combat, he had lost 40 ships. Not destroyed, disabled. The humans were fighting with their hands tied behind their backs, still winning easily. His fleet was not facing defeat. They were facing humiliation. "All ships," he said, his voice hollow. "Cease fire. Power down weapons." Across his fleet, Vrelian warships went dark. The human vessels maintained their positions, weapons still tracking every target. Then smaller human craft began approaching, boarding parties preparing to take control of the disabled Vrelian ships. On the Crimson Wrath, Throck waited as a human shuttle docked. Armed soldiers entered his command deck, wearing armor that looked functional rather than ceremonial. Their weapons were held ready, but not pointed at anyone. They moved with practiced efficiency, clearly having done this many times before. A young human woman entered. She wore the insignia of a lieutenant and carried a data pad. She looked at Throck without fear or hatred, just professional assessment. "War Chief Throck," she said politely. "I am Lieutenant Soman. You and your crew will be detained until formal surrender terms can be negotiated. You will be treated according to the Galactic Convention on Prisoners of War. Your injured will receive medical care. Your crew will be fed and housed appropriately. Do you understand?" Throck stared at her. You are being civilized? After what we tried to do?" "Yes," Soman replied simply. "We are not savages, War Chief. We know how to fight wars. We also know how to end them. Please cooperate, and no one else needs to die today." As Throck was led away from his own command deck, he passed a screen still showing the tactical display. The human fleet had not moved. They maintained perfect formation, weapons ready, waiting. Disciplined, professional. Terrifying Dot and Throck finally understood what the humans had been trying to tell the Council for 50 years. Their politeness had never been weakness. It had been a choice. A choice to keep their true nature hidden, to give everyone a chance to live in peace. The Vrelians had mistaken that choice for inability. They had thought the humans could not fight. But watching the organized efficiency of their capture, seeing the calculated precision of their military response, Throck realized the truth. The humans could fight. They just really, really did not want to. And somehow, that made them more frightening than any warrior race he had ever encountered. The Galactic Council chamber had descended into absolute chaos. On every screen surrounding the circular room, the battle in the Sol system played out in real time. Council members from hundreds of species watched in stunned silence as the supposedly weak humans systematically dismantled the most feared military fleet in known space. Ambassador Hannah stood quietly at the human delegation section, her hands folded, her expression serene. Beside her, Captain Deho maintained his diplomatic posture, though his eyes never left the screens. The transformation from hunted to hunter had taken less than 15 minutes. A Chithrax counselor scuttled toward them, her multiple legs clicking frantically against the floor. How? How is this possible? Your ships were catalogued. Your military capacity was assessed. You were classified as minimal threat. Hannah turned to her with that same gentle smile that had puzzled so many species for so many years. You catalogued what we showed you. You assessed what we wanted you to see. And you classified us based on assumptions that were never tested. You deceived us. A Quarthan representative shouted from across the chamber. You lied to the council. No, Deho said firmly, his voice carrying through the chamber. We never lied. We reported our civilian vessels accurately. We participated in all military disclosure protocols as required. We simply never volunteered information about capabilities you never specifically asked about. The Council assumes all species maintain minimal defense forces. We complied with your expectations while maintaining adequate protection for our people. On the screens, another wave of Reliant ships powered down their weapons. Human boarding parties moved with frightening efficiency, taking control without firing a shot. The precision was almost surgical. Brightness of dawn floated to the center of the chamber, their gaseous form pulsing with distress. This is not how civilized species behave. War is supposed to be a last resort, entered into reluctantly, prosecuted with minimal force. Ambassador Hana walked to the speaking platform, and for the first time since joining the council, her diplomatic mask completely fell away. What remained was something older, something tired, something that had seen too much. With respect, mediator, that is exactly what we did. War was our last resort. We tried every diplomatic option. We warned War Chief Throck multiple times. We gave him 7 days to reconsider. We prosecuted this action with minimal force. Not one Reliant ship has been destroyed. Casualties are being minimized. Injured are receiving medical care. We are following every rule of warfare that civilized species should follow. But the speed, Illuminar Counselor whispered. The overwhelming victory. The precision. This is not the action of a species that reluctantly goes to war. No, Hannah agreed, and her voice carried a weight that silenced the entire chamber. This is the action of a species that learned how to wage war over 10,000 years of constant practice. We know how to fight because we could not stop fighting ourselves for most of our history. We perfected warfare because we had no choice. We studied every strategy, developed every weapon, refined every tactic because our survival depended on it. She paused, letting that sink in. Around the chamber, council members were accessing Earth's historical database with new urgency. Images began appearing on personal displays. Ancient battles, medieval sieges, industrial warfare, nuclear exchanges, conflicts that spanned continents and consumed millions of lives. You asked us to be civilized, Hana continued. So we learned to control what we are capable of. We joined your council. We followed your rules. We smiled and apologized and cooperated. Not because we were weak, but because we were trying to be better than our history. Do you understand? We were trying so hard to leave all of this behind. A young Chithrax analyst stood up shakily. I reviewed your military doctrine, the files that are now being shared. You have names for everything. Total war, asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, scorched earth, mutually assured destruction. You have entire academic fields dedicated to studying conflict. Yes, Theo said quietly, because we needed to understand it to survive it. And then we needed to understand it to prevent it. On the main screen, Commander Jiwan appeared. She was standing on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, which had apparently transformed from a diplomatic vessel into a command and control platform. Behind her, tactical displays showed every Vrelian ship, every human position, every calculated possibility. Honored Council, Jiwan said, her voice emotionless and professional. At this time, 247 Vrelian vessels have surrendered. 41 remain engaged, but their defeat is mathematically certain within 17 minutes. Total Vrelian. Casualties: 19,412 injured, 2,803 dead. Human casualties: 0 ships lost, 47 wounded, 3 dead from a reactor accident unrelated to combat. She let those numbers hang in the air. We have not pursued the Vrelian home fleet. We have not attacked Vrelian colonies. We have not threatened Vrelian civilians. We have responded with exactly enough force to end this threat and no more. This is what restraint looks like when it comes from a species that knows the alternative. The Quarthan representative, collector of stories, stood slowly. His 3 eyes were wide, with what might have been fear or respect or both. You maintained an entire military infrastructure in secret. For 50 years, you hid weapons, trained soldiers, and prepared for a war you claimed you did not want. How can the Council trust humanity after this revelation? Hana looked at him sadly. Collector, we maintained the capability for self-defense while genuinely pursuing peace. Those are not contradictory positions. We wanted peace. We still want peace. But we will never again be helpless. Too many species in our history learned the cost of that mistake. But where does it end? Brightness of Dawn asked. If humanity has this much military power, what prevents you from using it to dominate others? You have just demonstrated that you could conquer half the Council if you wished. Deho stood beside Hana. Together, they looked at the assembled Council, and in that moment, every species present understood that the political balance of the galaxy had fundamentally shifted. What prevents us, Dalio said, is the same thing that has prevented us for 50 years. Choice. We choose not to conquer. We choose not to dominate. We choose to cooperate, to trade, to share knowledge and culture. Those choices are real. But they are choices, not inevitabilities forced upon us by weakness. The Vrelians thought our civility meant we could not fight, Hana added. Others may make the same mistake. Let me be absolutely clear. Humanity does not want to be a military power in this council. We want to be partners in building something better than the endless cycles of conquest that dominated our own history. But we will defend ourselves, our allies, and our principles with every capability we possess. A screen showed the last Vrelian ship powering down its weapons. The battle was over. 4 hours and 12 minutes from first contact to complete victory. The Vrelian Empire, which had terrified the Council for centuries, had been systematically defeated by a species most considered harmless, a lunar counselor. One of the oldest members of the Assembly floated forward. His name was Ancient Light, and he had helped found the Council nearly a millennium ago. I have lived through many changes, he said, his voice weak but clear. I have seen species rise and fall. I have watched empires form and crumble. but I have never seen anything like this. He turned his entire form toward the human delegation. You frightened us today. You showed us capabilities we did not know existed. You revealed that our understanding of your species was fundamentally incomplete. Yes, Hana said simply. But you also showed restraint. You won a total victory while minimizing casualties. You defeated your enemy while preparing to treat them with dignity. Ancient light pulsed with something that might have been approval. This is not the action of conquerors. This is the action of warriors who have learned wisdom. We learned it the hard way, Daiho replied. Through centuries of unnecessary death. We do not want other species to learn the same lessons we did. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then Ancient Light spoke again. The Council must vote on how to proceed. Humanity has violated no laws, but has revealed capabilities that change the fundamental power structure of our assembly. We need time to process this. Of course, Hana said, her diplomatic smile returning, though now everyone saw it differently. It was not a sign of weakness or uncertainty. It was a conscious choice to be pleasant in the face of difficulty. We will cooperate with any council investigation. We have nothing to hide. Not anymore. As the session adjourned, council members left in small groups, talking in hushed voices. The humans remained at their station, waiting patiently. A young Chithrax approached nervously. Ambassador Hana? May I ask you something personal? Of course. When you smile, when you are polite, when you apologize for small things, is that real? Or is it all an act? Hana considered the question carefully. It is real. We genuinely prefer kindness to cruelty, cooperation to conflict, peace to war. But preference is not the same as inability. We can be kind because we choose to be, not because we must be. Does that make sense? The young Chithrax thought about it. I think so. You are dangerous, but not cruel. Exactly, Hana said gently. And we hope that distinction matters. 3 weeks after the battle in the Sol system, the Galactic Council reconvened for what many were calling the most important session in its 1,000-year history. The chamber was packed beyond capacity, with representatives from species that had never attended before now floating. Sitting or standing wherever space allowed, Captain Daiho, Ambassador Hana, and Commander Jiwan entered together, and the chamber fell silent. Every eye, sensor, and perception organ turned toward them. The humans walked to their designated section with the same calm dignity they had always shown, but now everyone saw it through a different lens. They were not meek diplomats grateful for a seat at the table. They were apex predators who had chosen to sit peacefully among prey. Brightness of dawn floated to the center platform, their gaseous form swirling with complex emotions that their species expressed through color shifts. Today, they were showing deep purple, the shade of profound uncertainty. This council was founded on principles of mutual cooperation and shared weakness, they began. We believed that by limiting military power, we could ensure peace. The events of recent weeks have challenged that belief fundamentally. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Humanity has demonstrated capabilities far beyond what we understood. They have shown that our assessments were incomplete. More importantly, they have revealed that at least one species among us maintained significant military power while claiming to embrace our peaceful principles. We never claimed otherwise. Daiho said, standing. The council may speak. Speak, Captain, Brightness of Dawn replied. Daiho walked to the center platform. He looked different than he had 3 weeks ago. Not physically, but in the way he carried himself. The diplomatic softness was gone, replaced by quiet command presence. The council operates on a fundamental misunderstanding, he said. You believe that peace requires everyone to be equally weak. That if no one can fight, no one will fight. But the Vrelians proved that assumption false. They maintained military power and used it to threaten others, knowing most species had abandoned their defenses. And you did the same? A voice shouted from the Chithrak section. No, Hannah said, standing beside Daho. We maintained the capability for self-defense while genuinely pursuing peace. The Vrelians maintained military power for conquest and domination. Those are completely different philosophies. Ancient Light floated forward, his luminescent form dimmer than usual, showing his great age. The question before this council is simple. Can we trust humanity? You have shown that you are capable of great violence. What prevents you from using that capability to impose your will on others? Commander Jiwan stood, and many council members shifted uncomfortably. They had seen her tactical displays, watched her calculate the destruction of the Vrelian fleet with cold precision. She was perhaps the most frightening human of all, because she showed no emotion. Only competence. What prevents us, Jiwan said in her quiet, measured voice, is that we remember what happens when violence becomes the default solution. Every human child studies our history. We learn about the world wars, where millions died over territory and ideology. We learn about the nuclear age, when we came within minutes of exterminating ourselves. We learn about the resource wars that nearly destroyed our planet before we finally unified. She paused, looking around the chamber. We do not avoid violence because we cannot commit it. We avoid it because we know exactly where it leads. We have walked that path to its end and found only ash and regret. So we chose a different path. That choice is not weakness. It is wisdom purchased with the blood of billions of our own people. The chamber was absolutely silent. On the main screen, images from Earth's history played. Trenches filled with dead soldiers. Cities reduced to rubble. Mushroom clouds rising over empty wastelands. Children starving in the ruins of civilization. The cost of humanity's education in the arts of war. Collector of stories, the Korthan representative stood slowly. I have spent these 3 weeks studying human history in detail. What I found terrified me. But it also made me understand something important. He looked at the human delegation. You are not like the Vrelians. They celebrate violence. They worship strength. They see conquest as glory. You see violence as tragedy, strength as responsibility, and conquest as failure. Is that correct? Yes, Hannah said simply. Then I propose, Collector of Stories continued, that humanity be granted permanent membership on the Council Security Committee with full voting rights. If we must have a species capable of military action within the Council, it should be one that understands the cost of such action. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species supported the idea immediately. Others protested, arguing that rewarding military capability was exactly the opposite of what the Council stood for. The argument raged for hours. Finally, Ancient Light called for order. We will vote. But first, I want to hear from the Vrelians. A screen activated, showing War Chief Throck. He was no longer on his flagship, but in a detention facility on one of Jupiter's moons. He looked diminished, his forearms hanging limply, his proud bearing gone. War Chief, Ancient Light said gently, you have been defeated. Your fleet is captured. Your empire is at humanity's mercy. What have you learned from this experience? Throck was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I learned that I am a fool. I saw the humans smile and thought they were soft. I saw them apologize and thought they were weak. I saw them cooperate and thought they were incapable of resistance. He looked directly at the camera. But they were none of those things. They were simply being civilized, and I mistook civilization for inability. And now? Ancient Light asked. Now I understand that the humans are more dangerous than any species I have ever encountered. Not because they are cruel or violent, but because they are capable of great violence, yet choose not to use it. That kind of restraint, that kind of control, it terrifies me more than any weapon. Why? Brightness of Dawn asked. Because it means they could destroy us all if they chose to. The only thing preventing that is their choice to be better than their history. And choices can change. Day-Ho stood. War Chief Throck, what are humanity's terms for your surrender? Throck looked confused. Terms? You have already given them. Medical care for our wounded. Fair treatment for prisoners. No attacks on our civilian populations. These are more generous than any terms I would have offered. Those are not terms, Hannah said. Those are basic decency. We are asking what political terms you would accept for peace between our peoples. Understanding dawned on Throck's face. You mean to negotiate? After you won? Yes, Day-Ho said. War is over. Now comes the harder part, building a peace that lasts. We would like your input on how to do that. Throck was silent, his alien features showing something that might have been shock or respect, or perhaps both. The Vrelian Empire will accept council oversight of our military. We will participate in mutual defense treaties. We will open our borders to council inspectors. And we will learn to be civilized, as the humans tried to teach us. The vote was called. One by one, species cast their decision. The Korthan voted yes. The Luminers voted yes. The Chithrax debated internally for several minutes before voting yes. Others followed Dot when the final tally came in. Humanity had been granted permanent security status, with 73% of the council voting in favor. It was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming Dot as the session concluded. A young Chithrax diplomat approached Commander G1 nervously. Commander, may I ask you something? When you were calculating the battle, when you were determining how to disable the Vrelian fleet, did you feel anything? Excitement? Fear? Anger? G1 looked at the young alien with dark, tired eyes. I felt sad. I felt disappointed that we had to show what we are capable of. I felt hope that maybe, after this, others would believe us when we say we prefer peace. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired? Yes, tired of preparing for wars we hope never to fight. Tired of maintaining capabilities we pray we never need to use. Tired of smiling and apologizing and being polite to people who mistake kindness for weakness. It is exhausting to be civilized when everyone assumes you are domesticated. The young Chithrax considered this. What is the difference? Domesticated means you cannot hurt anyone. Civilized means you could hurt everyone, but choose not to. We are not your pets or your children or your helpless friends. We are your allies, your partners, your equals. And we hope that will be enough. Weeks passed. A galaxy adjusted to its new reality. Human ships patrolled trade routes that had been plagued by pirates, their very presence enough to discourage attacks. The Vrelian Empire began the long process of reform under council supervision. New treaties were signed, establishing mutual defense pacts and shared security responsibilities. On the Eternal Dawn, Captain Day-Ho stood at his observation deck, watching the stars. Hannah joined him, holding 2 cups of tea. Do you think it will last? She asked. The peace we fought for? For a while, Day-Ho said. Until the next species decides to test us. Until someone forgets the lessons of the Vrelian defeat. Until we have to remind the galaxy again that our politeness is a choice. And will we? Hannah asked. Will we keep choosing to be civilized even when it would be easier to simply dominate? Day-Ho took the tea, sipping it slowly. Yes, because that is who we decided to be. Not because we cannot do violence, but because we know where violence leads. We have seen that ending, lived that nightmare, and chose something better. That choice is the only thing that makes us different from our ancestors. It is a heavy burden, Hana said quietly. To be both capable of terrible things and committed to avoiding them. Yes, Deo agreed. But someone has to carry it. Better us, who know the weight, and species who still think strength and cruelty are the same thing. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the galaxy spin slowly before them. Somewhere out there, species were learning a new lesson. Humanity was dangerous, but they were also honorable. They could hurt you, but they would rather help you. They had the power to dominate, but they chose to cooperate. The galaxy would remember the day humanity dropped its polite mask. But more importantly, it would remember what humanity chose to do with the power they revealed. Not conquest. Not domination. Not revenge. Just a quiet insistence on being treated with the respect that all civilized beings deserve. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was the most powerful message of all. That true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to build. Not in the capacity for violence, but in the commitment to peace. Not in dropping the mask of civilization, but in proving that civilization itself was the greatest weapon of all. The humans would smile again. They would apologize for small mistakes. They would say please and thank you. But now when they did, the galaxy would understand. These were not the actions of the weak seeking mercy. These were the actions of the strong choosing grace, and that made all the difference.